Soon, we will inaugurate the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, a continental symbol of self-reliance, unity, and clean energy.
Africa is about to enter a new age of energy, and at the heart of this change is a country with no access to the sea. For many years, this nation was seen as poor, often struck by drought, and dependent on foreign aid. Ethiopia, located in the Horn of Africa and sharing borders with Eritrea, Sudan, South Sudan, Djibouti, Somalia, and Kenya, has turned the world by building the largest dam in Africa, one of the most daring construction projects in modern times. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, also called GERD, sits on the Blue Nile, a branch of the mighty Nile River. For Ethiopia, this is far more than just another project. It's a bold statement of independence, determination, and a vision of a future free from energy shortages. The GERD rises tall in the western region of Ethiopia, close to Sudan. It is 145 meters high, 1,780 meters wide, and has a reservoir that can hold nearly 74 billion cubic meters of water. Its scale is hard to imagine. It is so massive that it changes the surrounding environment. Once it is fully running, the dam will produce more than 6,450 megawatts of electricity, enough to make Ethiopia the main source of power in East Africa and to supply energy to its neighbors who desperately need it. Construction of Ethiopian Renaissance Dam started in 2011 after over 10 years of tough construction, delays, political fights, and sacrifices. Ethiopia finally marked its completion with great joy. The cost reached about $5 billion, but unlike many other big projects in Africa, this one was not financed by loans from the World Bank or IMF. Instead, the money came mostly from within Ethiopia, through government bonds, public donations, and support of Ethiopians abroad. The dam turned into a national project where people contributed whatever they could, believing they were building their freedom from foreign influence. For ordinary citizens of Ethiopia, the Grand Renaissance Dam is not just a dam, it is their dream turned real, made of concrete and steel. Leaders have called it a landmark achievement, villagers see it as a kind of freedom, and engineers regard it as the boldest move Africa has taken towards controlling its own energy future. In a country of more than 120 million people, where many citizens once lived without steady electricity, GERD promises to light up homes, run industries, and fuel a new era of growth. The Ethiopian government noted that the dam alone can give power to over 60% of households and businesses, turning power cuts into memories. But while Ethiopia rejoices, those living downstream feel fear instead of joy. In Egypt and Sudan, the construction of the dam is seen as dangerous and threatening. These two countries depend heavily on the Nile River, and to them, the construction of the Grand Renaissance Dam feels like a threat to their very survival. To truly see why, one must understand the Nile's long history, its geography, and how deeply millions of lives depend on it. The Nile, stretching more than 6,600 kilometers, is the longest river in the world, running through 11 countries before it flows into the Mediterranean Sea. Its waters feed farms, provide drinking water, and have sustained the entire civilization for centuries. Yet, the sharing of the Nile has never been fair. The Blue Nile, which begins in Ethiopia highlands at Lake Tana, provides about 85% of water that reaches Egypt, which means that most of the water that fills Egypt's fields and Sudan's dams comes from Ethiopia. By building the Grand Renaissance Dam on this crucial source, Ethiopia has placed itself at the very heart of Africa's most serious water conflict. For Egypt, the Nile is life itself. Almost 90% of Egypt's freshwater comes from the River Nile. Without it, its farms would collapse. Its people, already more than 110 million and growing fast, will run short of water, and the survival of the whole nation will be at risk. This is why, while Ethiopia sees GERD as freedom, Egyptians view it as a threat pressed against their necks. The image is powerful. Ethiopia now controls the waters that may decide if Egypt prospers or suffers. This struggle did not just begin today. It has roots in the past, especially in old colonial treaties signed in 1929 and 1959, which gave Egypt the majority of the Nile waters. The 1959 treaty between Egypt and Sudan gave Egypt 55.5 billion cubic meters of water and Sudan 18.5 billion cubic meters, meaning together they controlled over 80% of the river. Ethiopia, even though it supplies most of the water, was never included. These unfair treaties ignored upstream countries, leaving behind anger that lasted for decades. So when Ethiopia revealed it planned to build the GERD Dam in 2011, it went ahead without asking Egypt for approval. Cairo protested right away, pointing to its historical rights and claiming the project was a threat to its survival. Ethiopia refused, rejecting the old colonial-era agreement, saying no foreign power could decide how it uses its natural resources. This rejection began a modern-day conflict where the right of a nation to its resources clashed with the survival of another. Over time, many rounds of talks were attempted and failed. The African Union, the US, and even the UN tried to bring Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan to a binding deal. Egypt wanted Ethiopia to guarantee steady water flow during drought. Ethiopia refused, saying such demand would stop the dam from doing its job. Sudan, caught between both sides, switched positions from supporting Egypt to working with Ethiopia, depending on its own changing politics. The tension got to a peak where the current president of the United States suggested that Egypt might one day destroy the dam if Ethiopia did not compromise. Ethiopia strongly condemned this, accusing the US of taking Egypt's side. In response, Ethiopia withdrew the US-led talks, saying it would not let outsiders control its rights to the dam. At that point, the Gate dispute was no longer just an African matter. It had become global, mixing superpower politics, colonial history, and African independence. Despite threats, failed talks, and warnings, Ethiopia pushed ahead. Each year, it celebrated new milestones, filling the reservoir, setting up turbines, and generating electricity for the first time. For Ethiopians, each step was a moment of pride, and for Egyptians, each step brought more alarm. The dam became a test of strength. Ethiopia showed it could resist pressure, while Egypt struggled to find new ways to hold on to its traditional power. Ethiopia's message was clear. With 120 million people growing by more than 2 million each year, and an economy eager to grow, GED is not optional, it is essential. It is the engine that can lift millions from poverty, turn Ethiopia into Africa's electricity hub, and reduce dependence on oil. With climate change already threatening Africa through drought and hunger, Ethiopia insists that clean hydropower is not just useful but necessary. But Egypt and Sudan remain fearful. They worry that in dry seasons, Ethiopia might keep too much water for itself, leaving them short. They fear that during political dispute, the dam could be used against them. Simply closing its gates could cut off Egypt's drinking water and farms. These worries have pushed Egypt to seek allies, call on the UN, and even issue hidden threats of war. The risk of conflict is real. Egyptian leaders have often said they will use every option to protect the Nile. They have carried out military exercises near Sudan, held joint drills with partners, and spoke with sharp words that fuel talks of war. But over the years, Egypt's power has weakened due to its own economic and political struggle. While the world focus shifted elsewhere, Ethiopia on the other hand stayed firm, continuing work on the dam even through civil wars, financial hardships, and outside pressure. For Ethiopia, the Renaissance Dam came to mean much more than water. It became a symbol of Africa changing its story, breaking free from dependency, and showing that Africa can build and fund their own future. Ethiopia's choice not to borrow money for the project was deliberate. By avoiding debt to global banks, GED turned into a monument of independence as well as engineering. The Nile currently supports over 280 million people in 11 countries, and any disruption could cause hunger and suffering. Sudan fears its own dams might be damaged if Ethiopia suddenly releases water. Egypt fears losses, food shortages, and instability if the river flow decreases. To them, GED feels like an uncertain storm rather than a gift, and so the divide deepens. On one side stands Ethiopia with 120 million people celebrating a new energy age. On the other side, Egypt with 110 million people fearing their ancient lifeline is slipping away. Between them lies Sudan, torn between both sides, waiting to see how history unfolds. The GED is now more than a dam. It is a symbol of Africa's destiny and perhaps its biggest test. Will it bring cooperation or conflict? For now, Ethiopia rejoices. Homes, once in darkness, now shine with light. Industries begin to work with new energy, and the dreams of selling power to neighboring nations move closer. The Grand Renaissance Dam stands as a giant reminder that Africa's future will not be shaped by colonial treaties or foreign influence, but by its own people. Yet, the Nile still flows north, carrying both hope and fear, binding together nations that cannot separate their fates. The question is no longer if GED will change Africa. It already has. The real question is what kind of Africa will it leave behind? Do well to drop your honest comment and tell us what you think about this magnificent project. Don't forget to subscribe and share. Thank you.